What is up, everybody? Welcome to the first part of this three-part Premier League preview series. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss anything coming up on the channel, including the rest of this series. Quick programming note, because I did the recap video for the gold medal match on the women's side with the U.S. defeating Brazil, and I'm kicking off this series both over the weekend. No weekend roundup this weekend, so this video is kind of taking the place where the weekend roundup would usually be. Wanted to start this series by talking about tiers and kind of breaking all 20 Premier League teams into tiers and kind of how I see the season playing out for all of them. We're going to go from top to bottom. So starting with the relegation candidates. Brentford, Ipswich, Leicester, Nottingham Forest, Southampton. Start with the three promoted clubs. Ipswich Kieran McKenna has done an incredible job getting this team to the Premier League with a bunch of kind of journeyman lower league players, similar to Luton Town last season. Automatically, when that's kind of the roster construction, you're a relegation candidate, and just the difficulty of trying to come up. Southampton, it's not like it's been an overwhelming transfer window so far. Leicester, again, not an incredibly inspiring window. You also probably have a points deduction coming. So those three teams, pretty self-explanatory. Brentford, I don't think they're going to get relegated, but you could see the trajectory that started last season continuing. Having Ivan Toney back is going to help with that and not dealing with that suspension. But I just have some questions about whether they're going to kind of be able to regain their footing. And Nottingham Forest has been in this area before. Don't see that changing this season. So those are the five teams I have as the relegation candidates. Then you've got your mid-table sides, kind of teams that aren't going to be in the relegation battle, that don't have to worry about safety, but also probably aren't really threatening the top half, and especially kind of those top 8 places or so. This group, I've got Bournemouth, Everton, Fulham, and Wolves. Bournemouth just sold Dominic Solanke. I also question just how high their ceiling is. Dani Arroyo has done a phenomenal job. There's no question about that. I just don't know how much farther he can take them, especially when you just lost your best player from last season. Everton, same thing. If they can just have a somewhat normal season without a points deduction, I have been very, very consistent and very outspoken in my support of Sean Dyche. What he did last year was remarkable. I just don't see the squad to do anything more than comfortably survive. Fulham, again, kind of questions about the trajectory, where things are going. You lost arguably your most important player. Same thing with Wolves, Pedro Neto going to Chelsea. I like these teams enough that I don't think they're going to get dragged into the relegation fight, but I don't see them really pushing and challenging to kind of move up the table and get into the top half, and specifically the top 8. The teams I do see having that kind of potential are Brighton, Crystal Palace, West Ham. No surprise here is, Brighton and West Ham have been in these positions fairly recently. Brighton dealt with some injuries and some transition last season. I could see them bouncing back a little bit. Not convinced that's going to happen. I think they're more like 10th than 8th or 7th. And then West Ham, again, not convinced that they're really going to put pressure on these last 2 tiers, but Julian Lopetegui is your coach. Maybe he can unlock something that there was just this ceiling because of the ways David Moyes played, and it looks even better, and it's kind of just a fresh start. West Ham needed to move into a new direction, to kind of turn over the page. That's what they've done. There could be some real benefits from that. And then Crystal Palace. Probably the most interesting team in the league to me, just because of where does this go? How real was the end of last season? Because it went on for long enough that it was legit. But how much of it was Oliver Glasner? How much of it was the players that are still there? How much of it is specifically Michael Olise? And as I'm recording this, Mark Gahey, Eberechi Eze, still Crystal Palace players. Does that change as well? Because that's going to alter the complexion of this a little bit. I just don't see them being able to carry that out for an entire season, especially without Olise. But I buy generally what he was able to do with this team, and would not be shocked if they're somewhere in the 8 to 10 range. They were playing like a Champions League team for a couple months there at the end of the season. That has to count for something. Speaking of the Champions League, our Champions League hopefuls, teams trying to finish in the top 4 or top 5, depending on, but I just generally kind of keep it top 4 still, even though it's possible to get 5 teams now. That's Villa, Chelsea, Manchester United, Newcastle, and Tottenham. Chelsea and Manchester United, I'll believe it when I see it in terms of doing anything more than trying to finish top 4. And I'm going to talk about this more later, but I'm not convinced either of them are finishing top 4. I don't care how many signings are made. United appears to have had a really good window. Chelsea's added more players. But we've done this before, and the results have been the same. Until something actually changes, I'm not buying either of these teams. But they're 2 of the best 8 teams in the league. They should finish easily top 8. It's entirely possible that they get into the 4, 5, 6 range. And that's also partially because you look at the rest of these teams. Okay, Aston Villa had some PSR stuff they had to navigate, so that squad is probably not quite as good as the one last season. Plus, you now have Champions League responsibilities. I could see them taking a step back. Newcastle's a team I'm really high on. I think it's easy to forget about what Newcastle did 2 seasons ago. The toll that Champions League takes on a team that just simply didn't have the depth. Now you don't have to worry about that. You can put all your focus on the Premier League. I really expect Newcastle to have a bounce-back season, and then Spurs. The thing here is, okay, you had the injuries at the end of last season. It was year 1 under Ange. What does all of that look like? Still have questions about their ceiling, but I generally believe in Postecoglou and what he's doing. To me, there is a path to a top 4, top 5 finish for Spurs as well. And then finally, of course, your title contenders. This is all in alphabetical order, so that is not me saying that Manchester City are 3rd in some kind of power rankings. Let's be very clear about that. But I do have these 3 teams in particular as the top 3. No surprises here. Arsenal, Liverpool, Manchester City. Arsenal have to be there after last season. They've earned that right. Had they actually gotten better? Maybe, maybe not. To me, the bigger question is, do they have another level that they can reach? That could mean actually improving the squad. Maybe Calgary becomes that guy. But also you have 2 really good center backs already. There's plenty of questions to be asked about exactly what the plan is with all of these kind of versatile defenders. So to me, it's more about, can this team collectively elevate? Now, maybe just having more depth is that thing that kind of takes Arsenal that extra step. Maybe they don't have that extra step at all, and last season was about as good as it gets. Because I do think they need to take one more step in order to not just push Manchester City for 38 games. That was an important step in the growth process, in the improvement, in the journey. Do they have one more left? They at least have the benefit of the doubt in terms of opening up that possibility. Therefore, they are absolutely title contenders. I also have Manchester City, self-explanatory. Don't need to get into that. I also have Liverpool here just because there haven't been significant changes here, right? The last couple seasons, there's been a lot of new additions. You give them some more time. I have a particular player that I think might have a breakout season for Liverpool. Stay tuned for that in one of the next videos. Yes, your transitioning managers. Yes, maybe Arne Slot is not Jurgen Klopp. In fact, he is not Jurgen Klopp, and I acknowledge that. But that squad is really good. That squad has guys who have won the league before. To me, they've also earned the benefit of the doubt in terms of being in this conversation. Until I see differently, they are slightly below Arsenal and Manchester City for me. But these are the only 3 teams I could see winning the title. I would be shocked if it was anybody else. I can talk myself into all 3 of these teams. So that is why they are the 3 title contenders. Those are your Premier League tiers. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for the rest of this series.